And welcome to Thrift Shop Biography. This is the one about Rob Lowe. Thank you for listening. Hello, Cleo.
Hello, Richard.
How are you?
Excellent. How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Thank you very much. So, this week we have the book by Rob Lowe.
Robert Helper Lowe.
Hepler.
Hepler? Huh?
Yeah, it's not Helper.
What is it? Hepler?
Yeah.
Oh, I wondered why it was called Helper.
Yeah, but I wondered why it was called Hepler.
Hepler. That's still a stupid name.
Yeah, it really is. Rob Hepler Lowe. Called Stories I Only Tell My Friends.
Yeah. I think, by the way, it's a very well-written book. And they are like stories. They're like lots of little stories that make up a life.
Yeah.
You know, he never gets bogged down with anything. It's very anecdotal.
Yeah, no, it is. It's an easy read, isn't it? Which is good after Agatha Christie.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated Rob's easy flow in his autobiography.
Yeah, me too. A really pleasurable read from a fairly pleasant man.
Yeah, I think so. At least that's how he comes across in the book that he wrote.
Yes, yes.
So, are you a fan of Rob Lowe?
Not particularly. He's one of those teen idols where I was in love with Sherlock Holmes at the time, you know what I mean? So I'd probably find him more attractive now looking back because I've changed. He's got a beautiful face.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that has played a big part in his success, the fact that he is so good looking.
He's stunning, yeah. Why, were you?
What, good looking?
Were you a fan of Rob Lowe?
Yeah, definitely. In the 80s, definitely. I really was so into movies and that whole Brat Pack thing with all of those actors. Yeah, I was a big fan, and I remember going to the video store every weekend and renting a new Brat Pack movie every weekend. So I saw them all.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, and as soon as one of them was in another film, I'd go and rent it, you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
I missed all of them, the whole lot.
You were just too busy reading Agatha Christie, weren't you?
Yeah, I was too weird. Yeah, I was in with the nerds.
Hey, I was surprised to find out Rob Lowe was a nerd. That's the biggest surprise of this book. Anyway, we'll get to that. But,
we shouldn't be surprised because we've already unearthed that the coolest people were always nerds.
Are you calling him a coolest person?
Yeah. Yeah, well, his life ended up pretty cool, didn't it?
I guess it did, yeah. I mean, I'd like his life.
Yes, I'll still keep mine. You can have his.
Shall we just get on with it?
Let's do it.
Robert Hepler Lowe.
Yes.
Born in 1964 in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Yes. Although after 6 months, he moved to Dayton, Ohio.
Yeah. And his mum and dad, I mean, they're intelligent people, aren't they? His mum was an English teacher and his dad was a lawyer, went to law school when he was born. So they're bright.
I know. Whilst he gradually, over the years, unveils how completely insane his mother is.
Oh, yeah, I know.
At the odd time, he'll drop in that she's really sharp, amazing conversationalist, really well read. And you think, you know what? He's one of those people who grew up around people, adults that were really on it.
Yeah.
And so he's really, obviously, easy to talk to around adults and stuff. He's obviously got a gift of the gab, hasn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And I say that because he's quite confident and he could just push himself forward in loads of situations. And that's how he's got somewhere. So they're obviously, really intelligent. I bet he had really great conversation around him all the time, around the dinner table, you know, law, politics, health, just general banter, but nothing patronising.
Yeah, and I think he was independent from a young age. He'd go off by himself and do stuff. The picture of his dad in the book, he's even better looking than Rob Lowe.
He is. He said he got movie star looks and all the women are after him. And after hardly any time of marriage, I mean, they married quite young, yeah. Well, they were high school sweethearts. And his mum was beautiful, but his dad was like movie star good looking. And yeah, they married and then, you know, lipstick found on the collar, classic. So in no time, they were at each other's throats and arguing. And then by the time he was 4, his little brother was born. And yeah, there was so much cheating and rows, his dad just left.
Yeah, he says, even at the hospital, he says that his dad fainted when his little brother Chad was born.
Yeah.
And then he said the baby came home and my father did not. I guess being with this woman who they argued all the time and was driving him crazy, and then having another baby with her seemed to be too much for him, and he fainted and never came home again.
Yeah, yeah. It seems like he fainted. It feels like shock, but you should have known a baby was coming, you know?
Now, by the way, do you know Rob's little brother, Chad? Chad Lowe?
No, I don't.
Okay, he's also an actor.
Yeah, I Googled him and I haven't seen anything he's in, but I didn't Google his face though. Is he good looking?
Yeah, he is, but he's not as good looking as Rob or his dad. I feel a bit sorry for him because I think obviously having a hugely successful, hugely good looking brother, he probably lived his life in his shadow.
Probably, yeah.
I think it's really hard to carve out a career for yourself when you have a successful sibling going before you.
Yes.
But I think I might be misremembering this, but I think Chad Lowe married Hilary Swank.
Really?
Maybe. Yeah, I think so. But his career never really, well, I say his career never got going, but do you know what? I'm comparing him to his hugely successful sibling.
Yeah,
Actually,
exactly.
He probably had a very comfortable, he could be a really good character actor, and that's why we don't know him so much, because we don't know his name.
Exactly. If he works constantly, that's all you need to be a successful actor, in my opinion.
Yes. And it's probably a better life than being hugely successful and getting pulled in every direction.
Oh, yeah. Screamed at.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So Dad's left home. Nutty mum, unfortunately. But it's not long before she marries again, this guy called Bill, right?
And he's great.
For a while.
Yeah, Bill was a really good father figure. And to be honest, his dad was a good father figure. And he had weekends with him and they'd have a lot of fun and eat burgers and do all sorts. Proper fun dad.
Well, it's easy to be a dad when you divorce and the mum gets to keep the children because the kids just get the best of you. Then it's really hard to go home to the mum because she's the one who has to discipline you and send you to school.
Yeah.
So I don't buy that exactly saying I had a nice time with my dad. Mum, unfortunately, was mentally ill, wasn't she?
Yeah, but, she did seem like actually a good mother. Years later, when he's saying she dropped him at drama schools and auditions and things like that.
Yes.
And he said she was never pushy. She'd literally drop him and go.
Yeah, I think it's when he became a teenager that she really started struggling. I think when he was younger, she seemed like she was holding it together a bit more.
Possibly.
Do you feel sometimes in this book that he doesn't really tell you everything?
Yes, but that's okay.
So it's up to us to make it up.
Yeah.
Oh, she was a nightmare as mother.
Yeah. Well, at some point, did I imagine it, or does he say that she was bipolar, or that she would have been diagnosed as bipolar, but they didn't know such things at that time?
I don't remember that being specifically mentioned in the book, but that sounds
I know, I couldn't find it when I went back through.
Yeah, it sounds like a case that is what it could be, like undiagnosed.
I think she probably was. It's huge bouts of depression and huge amounts of time she spends in pyjamas. And he says he has a visceral reaction to seeing women in pyjamas to this day.
Yeah.
She was going to an allergy hospital. Like, she once took Chad when Chad was 7 and he had absolutely nothing wrong with him. And she took them both, and checked them in for 2 weeks, and they had to fast for 2 weeks and try all these different drugs and stuff. And there was nothing wrong with either of them. When they came back, they were then filled the freezer with yak meat or something, and just bizarre things, which is why they loved seeing their dad, so they could just have a burger and chill out.
Yeah.
And apparently Chad was terrified going into this hospital. So it is all mental disorder. It is in her mind, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely is.
There isn't anything technically wrong with her except what's wrong in her mind.
Yeah, which is very technically wrong.
Which is very wrong. Yeah. Yeah, I know.
Anyway, Rob Lowe went to the theatre as a kid and saw Oliver.
Yes.
And he says it was a transformational experience.
Partly it's because he's a little boy and he sees loads of kids like him up on stage. And he goes, I could do that. That could be me. This is why representation in the arts is so important. Because you literally need to see someone that's like you and go, I could do that. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened to him. And so he signed up there, and then in the theatre, the next production was The Wizard of Oz. So he's off.
He's off on the yellow brick road.
But from that moment on, when he's at school or hanging out with his friends, he's the acting fag.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone thinks he's gay and all the girls won't talk to him. That's a real thing that gets put on boys that want to act, isn't it?
Yeah, I think because he is still in this small place, North Dayton in Ohio, and I guess young boys don't really act there, or not many of them. And so he really felt different and alone. And of course, you know what? His mum is deteriorating. He's got a man who is not his dad in his house. So he's really unsettled. And this is the thing that really surprised me. You know, when you see Rob Lowe in the 1980s, he is the most handsome, most popular man you could imagine. And it's hard to believe, actually. Of course, you only ever see him in his films. And so he's playing a character. It's hard to imagine that the actual man behind that is actually a little boy who feels very isolated and alone. I was very surprised to read that. I thought he would have been the popular jock throughout school.
Yeah, and he really wasn't. Yeah, he had almost no girl interest at all. And also his mum and dad, well, his mum and fake dad had started arguing every night, and he said he had to wiggle his foot to bang the bed to make sure he could try and drown it out. And that twitch of his leg stayed with him for years.
Yeah.
And these are how deep these things run. But Bill was really into politics and social justice, and he was a really nice fellow. And he used to take Rob with him to rallies and stuff, and leafleting, flyering and whatever. And so he actually got to learn about politics then. I imagine that was a real dinner table conversation. So he got a really good start in politics.
Yeah, I was really surprised. Did not expect to have a whole thread through this book about like Rob Lowe's involvement with politics.
Yeah, actual politics. Yeah, it's not just acting. He actually really gets that stuff.
Yeah, and you're right. It absolutely started here with Bill. Well, it probably started with his mum and dad. Like you say, they were intelligent people, and then Bill comes on and really gets him involved.
And in fact, that would have probably helped him get on the bus with Jane Fonda.
Yes, but we'll get there in a minute. You're going too far ahead.
Yes, we will.
So his mum, even though, like you say, she's deteriorating, she does appear still to be an involved mother, because when she's not in pajamas, she does drive him around to auditions and supports this fledgling career as a young actor. At some point, she takes him to audition for this big summer stock company. And then when they're coming back, they stop into a hotel and he sees this porter pushing in some luggage. And on the side of the flight case, it says Liza Minnelli. And he says to his mum, "Oh my God, Liza Minnelli's here. I want to try and find her." And his mum just says, "Go on then." And he goes up to the reception desk and says, "Oh, where's Liza Minnelli?" And they said she's in room 256.
Yeah.
I mean, that would never happen these days. And so he goes up and knocks on the door, and this man answers and he says, "Can I see Liza Minnelli?" And he says, "Come on in." And then there's this little interaction of child Rob Lowe saying, "Hi, Liza, I want to be an actor." It's just a really sweet interaction. It's just so surprising that it could even happen.
I know. And he says he was really freaked out, and then she drew him out with questions.
Yeah.
And just really was interested in him and relaxed him. It was a real turning point for him in actually meeting a real star, somebody he thought he could be. And also he said he realised that her husband was, I can't remember his name, Jack
Haley Jr., yeah.
Who is the son of the Tin Man, right? I'm really sorry how ignorant I am, but I did not know that Liza Minnelli, daughter of Dorothy, married the son of the Tin Man. I didn't know that.
Yeah, no, I didn't know that either.
Did you not? Oh, good.
No.
Not just me. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's next generation then. Wizard of Oz. And he's been in The Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, little Rob Lowe was in The Wizard of Oz, and the next thing he knows, he's talking to Dorothy's daughter and the Tin Man's son.
That's really cool.
I mean, it's nuts, isn't it? So he's having these little moments of, you see, what we were just talking about, him being independent and intelligent and being able to talk to people.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not the fact that we said that this could even happen, that he was allowed to go up and knock on a door. The fact is he was confident enough to do it on his own. His mum didn't go with him.
No.
He just took himself off, went on this little adventure, and totally stood there and talked to very famous people.
Yeah.
But he says at home, as exciting as these little moments in his life are, he says at home, his mum and Bill, the stepdad, are fighting every single night. And so he doesn't like being in the house. So as he's a young teenager, he gets on the bus and he actually starts going to the theatre by himself.
Yeah.
So he really is a theatre nerd.
He really is.
And then he gets another little brother called Mika.
Yeah, it's like, what was it? 9 years younger than him or so? Quite a lot younger.
And then she says when he's about 2, mum begins to get really bad and she stays in her bedroom all day long. So it is a serious illness, isn't it?
It is. Yes, when she decides to up and leave and move to California, it's 1976, so he's 12. They've moved to this place in Malibu near the beach, they're renting, and a little while later along comes this bloke. Dr. Steve. And he's the doctor from the allergy hospital. So even though she's nuts, checks herself into an allergy hospital, she still manages to pull the doctor.
Yes.
And actually allure him away from his job. And move him to Malibu.
Yeah.
So she is obviously very beautiful and alluring.
Yeah, but this shows her lack of judgment. It's like when they moved into their new house in Los Angeles, it's not a cool thing to do to your teenage sons, to just surprise them with another stepdad.
It's not.
But, she's not well.
She's not well, but especially as Rob loved Steve.
Do you mean Bill?
I mean, Bill, yes. Loved his dad and loved his grandparents, and had just had to be moved away from all of them. It's a lot to deal with. But you know what? It comes around quite fast because he loves the beach life. And Malibu, the way he describes Malibu in the 70s, completely different from how it is now. He says it was actually a really quiet town with only one butcher's, one bar, one pizza place, really small. And it was full of the odd people in life, like surfers and hippies and the odd rock and roll star, the working class. Like, it's what is it? How far from Hollywood? Like 45 minutes outside Hollywood, but this whole other world.
Yeah. People with money do exist in this area alongside everyone else. This was a surprising thing to me. And just who else is in that neighbourhood that he's just moved to?
Well, yeah, it's the coolest thing ever when he's walking around this marketplace and he sees these kids running around there in combat gear, and they're filming themselves, and they're filming a Vietnam War film, he finds out. The director is called Chris Penn, and their dad's actually Leo Penn, who's a TV director. His older brother's Sean Penn. Of course, all these people are legends now, but they were kids. They were 12-year-olds. And their mate is the Sheen family. So it's Emilio Estevez, who is one of the Sheen kids, and Charlie Sheen.
They're the neighbourhood kids who were just out playing and shooting a movie. Do you know what? One of the big revelations that I found out, I think only last year, was that Sean Penn actually is a middle-class Nepo baby. I really thought he was like a roughy-tufty little actor that came up from nowhere. And that's the way he kind of has promoted himself, really. So it was really surprising to find out that he was actually a rich kid from LA. And his dad was a successful TV director.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then the Sheens. I mean, Rob Lowe has moved into a house 4 doors down from Martin Sheen.
Yes,
Crazy,
exactly.
like you say, that's the craziness of that area in the 1970s.
There's loads of that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it's that the really famous people are living literally next door.
And he can easily find his peoples because they're just running around quite obviously acting in a film.
Yeah. He's really in the right place, isn't he, for things to happen now?
Yeah.
Like in stark contrast to being in North Dayton, where he was a real outsider and being bullied for acting.
Yeah.
Well, actually, where he is now, all the kids aspire to be actors because they're in Hollywood.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a hell of a gang to suddenly get in with.
Oh, isn't it, hey?
I mean, not that you knew that. We only know that now because they all are famous. But obviously they were kids who wanted something out of life. So they all had the same attitude.
Yeah, and they're really in a location where that actually happens. They have Martin Sheen and they have the dad is a TV director. People they know very well are hugely successful in these fields. So it's something that's completely possible for them. They're in the right place. It's weird to think, actually, that we know all of these people's names. Chris Penn, Sean Penn, Charlie
Everyone.
Sheen, Emilio Estevez, Rob Lowe. It reminded me of the Diana Ross book, where actually before they were all famous, again, it's a location thing. They were in Detroit. Diana Ross is there as a young girl, but also so is Smokey Robinson. Yes. So are the Miracles. So are the Temptations. They're all just in the right place because it's very localized to the industry.
It's a scene.
Yeah.
And later on, when he changes school and he's in high school in Malibu, he's in the same class as Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah. They're all there, aren't they?
Yeah. And then Tom Cruise ends up living with them.
Yeah.
Before they were famous at all, he's living with them. But the other bonus is, because they were quite poor, they weren't poor, but they didn't have a lot of spare money, the Lowes, is that he could go around there and they'd be eating Haagen-Dazs all the time and swimming in a lagoon pool with tunnels. That just sounds like heaven to me.
Doesn't it?
And a fully professionally lit basketball court, like they really were living the high life. And for years he was hanging around. Even when he was making films, when he came home, he went to their house.
Yeah.
Because he just liked it better at their house,
of course. I mean, yeah.
Or the arguing at his house.
Yeah. And Martin Sheen's at their house.
Yeah,
Which
and
is
he could
kinda
get great
cool.
advice from Martin Sheen. It's just brilliant. He found a really great spare family.
Yeah, he really did. And Martin Sheen just sounds so generous with his time and advice. And
Yeah, he does. How much did you love that story when he's got a girlfriend and he's in a small TV thing? It's one of his first things. He actually gets a part in this TV show and he goes to his girlfriend's to watch it. He knows that her dad is an actor, but he doesn't know who Cary Grant is.
yeah, I know. Right?
And he sits with him and gives him all this fatherly advice, just like Martin
Yeah.
Sheen. You know, these are the people he runs into as spare father figures. Absolute
Yeah,
genius.
I guess if you live in that area, the chances of the kids at your school having famous parents or parents in the industry is probably quite high.
Yeah, I suppose
Although
you're
you
right.
probably don't expect it to be Cary Grant.
No.
But
Like Chad's school, he says, "Oh, they're filming something at my school," so he goes over to watch it, and it's Charlie's Angels.
yeah.
It's cool as hell.
Well, then he goes up to one of the guys on the crew and says, "Oh, I really want to be an actor." And he says, "Well, you should write to Aaron Spelling." And he goes, "Really?" He says, "Yeah, he'd really like to hear from you." And I kind of thought that was probably a sarcastic thing to say, but Rob Lowe writes a letter to Aaron Spelling. And then he gets a letter back, like the biggest TV producer in the country, sends him a letter back saying, "Oh, good luck with your career. If you ever need anything, you can come and see me." It's just
Yeah,
like,
you sound like a really nice fellow, and I think you'll make it.
yeah.
Like, really supportive. That tells me just how charismatic he is. That letter must have been great.
Yeah.
He's really sharp. And he always says he loved school. He loved learning. He worked hard and he was getting somewhere. He never was a school dropout.
Yeah.
With all of his partying.
Just being in the industry and being surrounded by these people. Him and Chad, his little brother, went to a baseball game.
Yeah.
One time, and his little brother had a baseball cap on with the opposing team on. They were in the wrong stand and they started getting bullied and a fight broke out, and this guy come over and stopped it. And then he said to them, "Oh, you seem like cool kids. Come and visit me at work. I'm the head puppeteer on the Muppets."
Unbelievable.
And it's just I know, it's just like everybody around. It's not like everybody around is in the industry, but everybody around just seems to be really open and nurturing. It says, I kind of thought this was going to take a dark turn, this story at this point.
No, but it's absolutely brilliant.
I know, I think my brain is so attuned to just thinking that it's just a network of paedophiles.
The worst of
that
everyone.
When I read that, when this guy, this complete stranger, approaches these two young brothers and says, "Come and see me at work. I work on the Muppets." You kind of think, don't go.
Yeah.
But it never turns into that.
Yeah, I mean, they walk in the studio and they're filming the Rainbow Connection song for the Muppet movie, and Jim Henson sat there with Kermit on his hand. Shh, if you didn't know. And Frank Oz is there with Miss Piggy on his hand, and they're actually watching that being filmed. There's so many things in his life where you go, okay, that's crazy. For example, that Diana Ross, where she's actually in Central Park and it rains so hard she has to leave in the end, and it's iconic. Andy Warhol had taken Rob Lowe.
Yeah, it's weird because we've read all about that in her book. She gives us an extensive account. It's weird.
Exactly, and you'd never
Rob Lowe and Andy
imagine.
Warhol sat there.
I know, it's literally, is it like Forrest Gump where he places himself in all these historic moments? That's Rob Lowe's life. There's so many things, like he's in Sting's studio when he's singing "If I Ever Lose My Faith." He's sat there when that's being sung. There's so many things.
Oh, that's weird because he takes his wife to see Pavarotti in Tosca at the Royal Albert Hall. Then he goes for a pee and Sting is stood next to him and says, "Oh, come and stay at my house for the weekend." It's just these chance encounters that end up in really good experiences.
He must be so charismatic.
It's because he has that face. Everybody wants to talk to a very handsome
He's
face.
got charm to go with it. He's not an airhead.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
Actually.
He's got it all.
Yeah.
He's definitely got it all. Oh, this puppeteer also invited them to watch the filming of The Tonight Show, which was the only time any puppet hosted The Tonight Show. Kermit. So, of course, they went.
Yeah.
And at that Tonight Show, he actually met the producer of The Tonight Show, who was called Burley Brillstein, who 20 years later became his manager and a father figure. But and he met John Belushi, who was an absolute hero of his, and he chatted to him a little bit. He said, "Have you got any advice? Because I want to be an actor." And he said, "Yes, stay out of the clubs,
Yeah.
which is an amazing thing to say to a 12-year-old, but he says, I wish I'd listened to him, because he didn't.
Perhaps that's when John Belushi got started at the age of 12.
Maybe, yeah. But yeah, he got his first agent, and he started getting auditions really quick. And then he got a commercial for Carl's Jr., that burger place, and he had a line in it. And so it actually made him cool, because that goes one way or the other sometimes, doesn't it? It could make you a bullying target. But everyone thought it was cool.
Yeah.
So that helped him.
Yeah, it did. And he's also getting professional experience of being on a set and stuff now, isn't he? Even though it's a commercial. And he's getting money.
Yeah.
He also got a Coke commercial around that time, and he got $2,500.
Yeah, that's bloody great, that. I tell you what, that is so much better than a paper round.
Yeah.
You'd be working till you were 45 to get that much money on a paper round. Yeah, so what? Okay, he's 1979. How old does that make him? 15? Yeah, 15. And he gets a part in this TV show on ABC called A New Kind of Family. He said, thank God I was so naive, because I had no clue how much the odds were against me getting that part. And he was in. And it was a full-time job. And some of the things that he says, like, I turned up every morning and had coffee and donuts. Never had either, you know.
Yeah.
He had his own dressing room, which he felt was like a clubhouse with his own phone. You know, these are just brilliant things to happen to you when you're 15.
Oh, my God. Yeah, he's got a main role on a TV sitcom at the age of 15. I didn't know this about him. This is...
No, I didn't know that. Well, his mum was so determined to spend equal time with all her kids. You know, like, do you remember when we read Beckham and we were going, what about his other kids?
Yeah.
You know, because the mum and dad are spending all the time at football.
Yeah, right.
In this case, this is one case where the mum didn't favour him, and she actually hired him, this bloke, to be a chaperone so she could spend time with her other kids who needed her. I like that. So that's pretty cool.
So they're filming this sitcom, and obviously it's not on air yet, and this is his first proper professional job. So they film about 4 episodes in front of a live studio audience. It's totally fine. You know, the audience are just laughing like they normally would laugh. And then the show goes on air. So he's on TV, and all of a sudden he's in people's living rooms. He said the next episode that they filmed, as soon as he walked onto the set, all the teenage girls started screaming, to the point where he couldn't even get his lines out, and he fluffed all of his laughs. And he says that's the first time he kind of thought, oh, Christ, my life is going to change here.
Yeah.
And it put the main star, this woman, I can't remember her name, it really put her nose out of joint, because all of a sudden she wasn't the star of the show anymore, because the girls were screaming for this 15-year-old boy.
Yeah, right.
Then to promote the show, they would send him out on promotional visits and stuff, and he said that's when girls started like running towards the car and stuff. So already he's becoming a teen idol.
Yeah, already. I can see how he would get sort of conflicted feelings of happiness and unease, and the empty, hollow feeling he gets, which always lead to drugs and alcohol, because the same girls, the exact same girls, wouldn't have looked at him twice before he was on that TV show. Right. Nobody was interested in him. And suddenly you're on TV, and then it makes him think, well, maybe they don't like me. Maybe they just like this idea of me, because when girls know the real me, they don't like me. And so then the seed is sown.
Yeah, he actually says about these girls, if you really knew me, you wouldn't like me nearly as much. So at the age of 16, he has imposter syndrome.
Yeah, it's quite heavy.
Gosh, and he's not even really got that much success yet, and he feels like he doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
That's sad, and I didn't expect to read that.
Yeah, true.
And especially because we've just been talking about what a confident, charismatic young man he is. Actually, he, you know, achieves a modicum of success, and all of a sudden he's like, oh, I'm not sure I deserve it.
Yeah, he's questioning it already. And there's that other classic thing where you work so hard to get to the pinnacle of the mountain or whatever. When you get there, you're disappointed. Mm-hmm. And I think it's that thing where it's because you think it's going to cure the hollowness in your soul, and it never does. As soon as you get it, you realise you still feel the same. If that didn't do it, what will?
Alcohol.
Yeah. yeah. And then, cool fact, they drop the series for a bit, and then when they pick it up again, there's a whole new family. There's a black family mixed with the white family, because the show's about divorce and 2 different families living together. And they obviously thought, well, let's try a different family and see if it works. And one of the girls in this other family is Janet Jackson.
Yeah.
How cool is that? And he just talks about how nice and sweet she was. I don't think he'd realised who she was for a while.
No, I don't think he...
No. She was going, oh, well, when I finish this, I think I'll probably go into music like my brothers.
Oh, those brothers.
Oh!
Yeah, so the sitcom A New Kind of Family stiffs.
Yes.
And he goes back to work. He's a busboy in a restaurant.
Yeah.
He's not even a waiter. He goes back to being a busboy.
Yes.
So highs and lows, there we are. There's a low for Lowe.
Hey!
But the network, ABC, they sign him to a holding deal, which means they didn't have any work for him, but they're keeping hold of him to a contract. So they obviously like him. They know he's good. They're just waiting to put him in something. And then the after-school specials, which are these dramas. If you're not American, they're these dramas that come on after school, obviously. They're like morality tales.
Yeah.
They'll be about don't do drugs, don't have underage sex, that kind of thing. And he was in one of those. But quite soon, his life is about to change with a very significant film in the early 1980s.
Well, he was actually going to give up. He'd actually phoned his agent and said, it's 1982, I'm giving up. I've got to enroll at UCLA or USC. The agent phoned back and said, do you want to just try one last thing? And it was an audition for the movie The Outsiders.
Yeah, classic.
Francis Ford Coppola directing, who obviously is a legend, who did The Godfather and American Graffiti and Apocalypse Now and nearly killed Martin Sheen,
Yes.
who actually had a heart attack after filming that. It sounds insane. He had PTSD from Francis Ford Coppola. So, yeah, off he goes to do his first film with it. But the whole audition process is so exciting to read, isn't it? It's like a film in itself.
I really appreciated him going into such detail with this whole process of The Outsiders. Yeah, I really loved reading about it.
I know, it's so interesting because it's like the raw origins of so many people. You know, when they were just people, you know. He had 4 callbacks, and then the next time he went to this audition, it was a big group thing, and they were like 25 people at a time, and he was in with Emilio Estevez, who was his mate, Tom Cruise, who was already a new mate, and there was all these other ones. There was some of them were already famous, some weren't, and Tommy Howell, was he was a kid from E.T.
C. Thomas Howell, yeah, he's calling him Tommy, but his name is C. Thomas Howell. Yeah, he was in E.T. He wasn't Elliot, he was one of the other kids.
Oh, right. I wasn't sure which one he was, but he was 15 and E.T. hadn't come out yet. It'd been filmed, but it hadn't come out yet.
Yeah, it's just weird to think that so much future acting talent was in that rehearsal room.
Oh, my God.
Even the ones who didn't actually end up in the final movie, some of those did go on to be, you know, they're just on the audition circuit. So many people that he mentions, we know their names.
Yeah, it was the cream of the crop.
But obviously the success of the Outsiders film did springboard so many people to success.
It absolutely did, which I didn't realise, because I knew the Brat Pack was a thing, but this is the origin story.
Yeah.
And it's great. It's really exciting.
And just to read about all their different personalities, like he said, Matt Dillon would walk in and like not care about anything.
Yeah.
He was just charisma personified. He'd get away with anything. He could just walk in, do the minimum, but the directors loved him because he was just so cool.
Yeah.
And then playing the older character in the film was this actor that we've already read about called Patrick Swayze.
Yeah. He's just so in awe of him.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm in awe of Patrick Swayze anyway, and it was just nice to read Rob Lowe being in awe of him too.
Yeah.
I mean, he is just sounds like a perfect man, really.
Yeah, really, really lovely. And, you know, he just walks in and he's a gymnast and he's a carpenter and he's a skater and he's, you know, he's just like, it's anything this man can't do, you know.
But he's also, because he is a couple years older, he's so protective and like the big brother of all of these young actors.
Yes.
Yeah, he just sounds like such a decent man. I couldn't love him more.
I know. He's great.
So then they all, you know, obviously the ones who get through the audition stage are in this amazing film together, and it changes all of their lives.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Oh, I like how he describes Tom Cruise as well. He said he's got this like bloodless focus and intensity. And it was all business. And like when they went to New York for that final audition, they turned up at the hotel, they said they're all sharing a room, and Tom Cruise is like, no, we're not. He's 18. He gets onto his agent, says, we all need different rooms, and he's just on it with business, which is what he's been his whole life. It's like a robotic focus.
I wonder if these young men who got into The Outsiders and went on to have these amazing careers, they do all seem to be very confident in themselves.
Yeah, they do.
Like when I was 18, I wouldn't have gone up to a hotel reception desk and said, get my agent, we're getting single rooms. I would have just felt lucky to be there.
Yeah, you would. But they feel like that. It's Tom Cruise who's got the business edge. And look what he owns his own empire now. The others are just actors.
They're just multi-million-pound Hollywood actors with illustrious careers.
Yes, they are.
It's funny because when Rob Lowe talks about The Outsiders, he talks about getting the part of Soda Pop, and then he says it's one of the lead characters. And I never remembered Rob Lowe being the lead actor in The Outsiders. But the whole time they're filming it, because it's based on a novel which kids in America read in school, right? So we don't know it so much in England, but it's a very popular, famous story. So the film version is a big deal. And of course, it has Francis Ford Coppola, and Rob Lowe's first film role is the lead role in this massive film. So that's very exciting. And they film it all, and he really is in a lot of scenes. And then eventually he's invited to a screening, and about 15 minutes in, he's thinking, hang on a minute, where's my scene gone? And it's okay, because in the next scene, I've got a really good close-up shot where I'm really emotional. And then that doesn't come up, and it transpires.
The credits roll.
Yeah, the credits roll, and half of his scenes have been cut, and it transpires that the actual main story thread of the three brothers, one of which is Rob Lowe, has basically been shunted back, and it's like the Matt Dillon role and stuff that's been brought to the front. So Rob Lowe is absolutely crestfallen at this.
Crushed. And it still launches his career. He said, I did note that they made sure they kept in the scene where I'm naked with a tiny little towel.
Yeah.
Which is kind of set his path.
It did.
Yeah, I know. And he described at length this scene where he had to cry, and he did it about 9 takes, and he properly cried, but he cried himself dry. And then suddenly they went, and now the close up. He's like, what?
Yeah.
And then he managed to pull out one more time, weeping again. And that whole thing was cut. Because he just lived it with him, and he's described it. You end up feeling how he must feel. I don't think he said he never got over it. The disappointment, disillusionment absolutely killed him.
Yeah, it would be such a big deal at that time. He's still a very young man, and he thought this was his big break. I mean, like you say, it turns out it was his big break, but at that moment in time, he didn't know that. He thought he'd kind of been relegated to a bit part.
But he also says that was his drama school.
Yeah.
Like, he learned so much on that film. He learned how to find a character, do all the background research, all of that stuff. Basically, he got trained by Francis Ford Coppola, so he didn't come out empty-handed, and he was launched.
Yeah.
Along with everyone else. So it's pretty cool. Tom Cruise went off to do Risky Business, which was his big hit, and his career is obviously history. No, it's not history. It's current.
Yes. The rest is history.
Yeah, so he says he did about 2 films a year for the next 10 years.
Well, you know, the next film that he did was called Class, right? With Jacqueline Bisset. Where...
I've never heard of it.
Oh, yeah, I remember watching it. And I remember Andrew McCarthy being in it. And an interesting thing in this book is that this has happened before, and I couldn't remember who it was. But Andrew McCarthy literally went along to the audition because he was just with a friend who was auditioning. Andrew McCarthy never meant to audition. And then the casting director came out and saw him and took his photo and said, would you like to be an actor? And he ends up with the lead role in a film.
Brilliant.
And then he becomes like the heartthrob of the Brat Pack. He's in Pretty in Pink. And I'm amazed that he just went and we read Kelsey Grammer. Kelsey Grammer went along with his girlfriend
That's right.
for an audition, and the casting director came out and saw him.
Yeah.
So I guess the moral of this story is if you have any actor friends, escort them to their auditions.
I went to a thing once with my friend in New York, and she just stepped up and said her name, and she had a number she was holding, and they photographed her, and along she went. It was that basic. And I didn't get found.
You didn't. You didn't become a massive Hollywood film star.
No. And she didn't get the part.
Okay.
I think you have to have Rob Lowe's face.
Andrew McCarthy's face.
Oh, okay, his face. Or Kelsey Grammer's face. No, I don't know what you have to have, but you have to have what they're looking for that day.
You do.
It's absolute luck. It's lottery sometimes. But he had talent.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about this when I read this book. When he says, like, he'll say, I've memorised that scene and I went to this audition and I just dropped the script, looked him straight in the eye and just gave him the scene and I nailed it. You go, you've really got talent, you know, you just know he has. And he really gets a buzz out of really great and fast dialogue. That's his favourite thing. Because that Sexual Perversity in Chicago, David Mamet, that's theatre and he's really well known for that really quick, snappy dialogue. He was in that was renamed About Last Night. And The West Wing.
Yeah, well, with The West Wing is Aaron Sorkin, who's well known for his dialogue. And let's not forget that little Rob Lowe, he first got enthralled by acting by going to the theatre.
Exactly. And he takes the odd break and goes and does things like Three Sisters with Christopher Walken in a theatre. And he did Suddenly last summer with Maggie Smith.
I love that Richard Eyre, head of the National Theatre, who directed and cast Suddenly Last Summer with Maggie Smith, Rob Lowe's like, I can't believe that he chose me. So Rob Lowe said to him, well, what did you see me in? And he said, Wayne's World.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing that this
It's
high
amazing.
pedigree production chose Rob Lowe because they saw him in Wayne's World? That's
Exactly. So
hilarious.
he says, note to young actors, just say yes to everything because you have no idea what one thing will lead to another.
Yeah.
I googled that, by the way. The whole of that Suddenly Last Summer is on YouTube
Is it really?
for free. Yeah, it's all on there.
So the interesting thing about Rob Lowe is that he's done all of these films in the 1980s, like Youngblood, Oxford Blues, St. Elmo's Fire, which they're all like Brat Pack movies. All of these actors are in them. None of them are very remarkable, actually.
Isn't St. Elmo's Fire the biggest hit?
No, it was like critically panned. It's, you know, we know the theme tune. It does have like Demi Moore but it's not The Breakfast Club. It's not Pretty in Pink.
Oh, okay.
I kind of think Rob Lowe, I would say St. Elmo's Fire is Rob Lowe's biggest hit of the 80s. But it was not a significant film in any way.
No.
We all know it. It's not a box office hit. It wasn't great. I mean, how many people quote it to this day? Like nobody.
Nobody.
Whereas people do still reference like The Breakfast Club and Pretty in Pink. Some of those films really stood the test of time.
Oh, yeah.
But no Rob Lowe films really did.
Well, I've never seen any of these films.
Oh my God.
And I've probably only heard of some of them because we read Patrick Swayze's book.
Yeah,
Well,
right.
You know. Yeah, I just missed them all. Illegally Yours with Kim Cattrall. I've never heard of it.
Yeah, no, there are some films that I've not heard of that he's done.
Yeah, Masquerade. No, yeah, I think you're right. I don't think he was in any hits. And actually, yeah, I asked a few people just to test, and I said, "Do you know Rob Lowe?" They go, "No, I don't think I do." He was in Wayne's World. Oh, Rob Lowe.
Yeah, and what's interesting about Rob Lowe is you think about all those other actors in the Brat Pack, like Patrick Swayze, like Tom Cruise, like Matt Dillon. Actually, they've been in some pretty big films that everybody has seen. Like the films that Rob Lowe has been in that everybody has seen, like Wayne's World, like Austin Powers. He tends to have a smaller role in them.
Yeah, they're quite small parts.
Yeah.
But he's really good at comedy.
Yeah, he is.
He's got really good timing.
So he's riding the crest of this massive career. He's a massive film star, but he does say at one point towards the end of the 80s, a couple of films don't perform at the box office and he really takes a dip. So this was really interesting to me. He does go to Minnesota and he is part of the promotional team for the presidential candidate Michael Dukakis. I had no idea he was so immersed in politics.
Me neither. No idea. I mean, you might know that if you're American. It was probably on the news because they get so much attention. If you stick a film star next to a politician, everyone's interested suddenly.
But do you not find it surprising that like a 24-year-old, really good-looking, successful movie star takes time out to help somebody in the presidential campaign?
Yeah, well, I don't now. Now I know this man a little bit.
Yeah.
But I would have then. I would have was one of the Brat Pack hanging around boring politics. But yeah, I get it now.
You say like Jane Fonda, who we've also read, who is an amazing political activist, rounded up some Hollywood actors and took them on a bus to campaign various things. And Michael J. Fox and Rob Lowe and lots of other famous people were on that bus. So from a young age, he was very politically engaged and activated.
Yeah. He did say he had a massive crush on Jane Fonda.
Who doesn't?
Yeah, exactly. That might have swayed him. And also then he just describes what a total laugh he had with Michael J. Fox. Hilarious laugh.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of a fun road trip, really, wasn't it?
Yeah, it
Probably.
sounds brilliant.
But, you know, he also learned that you can change things because they did change.
Yeah.
the Safe Drinking Water Act
Mm-hmm.
got it passed.
You know, while he's in a dip in his acting career, he goes out one night in Massachusetts and he goes to a nightclub. And actually, he's very nearly not let into the nightclub because, of course, in America, you need ID and everybody needs to be over 21. And he has to go back to his car to get his ID. Goes into the club. He meets a couple of ladies and he takes them back to his hotel room and he films, videotapes their, what shall I say, their nocturnal activities in the bedroom.
He makes a sex tape.
Okay.
That's what he does. And, you know, there is a fair point he has, that he had no idea that one of them would be, any of them would be underage because of how difficult it was to get in without ID. And they even knew he was famous.
Yeah. I totally trust him on that he thought they were older.
That's fair. One of them was 16. I had to Google it because he doesn't go into detail. One of them was 16, the other one was 23.
No, but the reason why he got into trouble was not her being 16 and having sex with her because she's above the age of consent. It was the videotaping. You have to be 18 to make a videotape of your nocturnal activities in bed.
Oh!
You have to be 18 to make a sex tape, basically. And that's why he got in trouble.
I did not know that.
Well, he doesn't go into it in this book. I had to look it up.
He doesn't. He skirts over it.
Yeah. But I remember at the time, that was a big scam. I mean, like he says in the book, you know, celebrities having a sex tape is a career move these days. But back then, it really wasn't. It was a massive scandal. And I forget who it was, but somebody said, because obviously this happened in the dip in his career. I think it might have been Joan Rivers or somebody. Somebody said, at last, Rob Lowe's finally made a movie that people want to see.
Oh, harsh.
Anyway, so he's kind of like written off for a bit now because of this scandal, but Saturday Night Live asked him to come and host, and his agent say to him, don't, because this has undone so many people who think they're funny, but they're not.
Yeah.
And he goes on and actually he storms it. He makes fun of himself. He makes fun of the sex tape. And he does well. And again, this could be the beginning of the comedy thing, you know, because he's at Saturday Night Live. And, yeah. But then he gets to do this bit at the Oscars, which I think, like, historically, we remember it as a complete embarrassing disaster which damaged his career. That's how I remember it. I watched it last night on YouTube. It's not that bad.
Really?
It's actually quite charming.
Oh.
So it's weird to think how that was remembered as a complete disaster.
Maybe the press were just turning against him then, and they just used it as a story.
I tell you what, so he actually at the time, he said it was embarrassing because the audience weren't reacting or anything. So he felt bad and he went off stage afterwards feeling like shit. And he said this woman came up to him and said, young man, I had no idea you were such a good singer. Please come and sit with me. And it was Lucille Ball.
Yeah.
I love that because do you know what? In Arnold Schwarzenegger's autobiography, she was so utterly kind to him.
Yeah, and supportive.
Yeah, and to read that she was this kind to Rob Lowe when basically everybody else was laughing at him. I think Lucille Ball is a wonderful, wonderful woman.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, at 25, he said he felt empty and old. Basically, he then fell in love and realised that he couldn't have a relationship if he hadn't sorted himself out. So, he went into rehab in 1990. And he said that your emotional maturity is frozen at the age you become famous, which is one school of thought that he learned in rehab. So he's basically a teenager. And all the 4 weeks in rehab he found liberating because he was tired of lying. And also I think he probably just needed somebody to explain why he was like he was with all of his childhood stuff and just to work it all through just once because it sorted him out. He then got married, had 2 kids. And by all accounts, so I Googled around, because you know sometimes we go, oh, the kids messed up, was he really there for them? He says he was there for them and he mostly gave up acting. He really was. The kids said he was the best dad in the world. They're really well brought up. He pretty much packed it in. They moved to Palm Springs or somewhere up, anyway, just outside of Hollywood, and he raised his kids.
Yeah.
He actually became a sober man, a good husband, a great father, and then nailed it in West Wing for 4 years, and he goes on.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, he does seem like a thoroughly decent chap, actually. I think he does have a release valve. I think he knew when he was going down the dark roads with drinking too much, because he doesn't really talk about it that much in this book. And it made me kind of think, how bad was it actually? Because you're not telling us it was bad. But if you had to go to rehab, it was actually bad.
Yeah, but he doesn't have the same struggle with it as anyone else, because one stint in rehab and you're cured. means that he was really only dabbling in being an alcoholic, you know.
Also, he's intelligent enough maybe to realise that he's on a slippery slope and he got help at an early stage, which probably does make it easier to be cured and not go back. Whereas other people probably just get stuck in that cycle too much. I don't know.
Maybe.
Anyway,
yeah,
he did the right thing and he got cured. Maybe it was Jim Belushi's advice and he saw what happened to Jim Belushi, so he thought, right.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Do you mean John Belushi?
I do. I should stop drinking. Too much coffee. I need to go to rehab for coffee.
What I'd like to do now, a total nostalgia trip. I'd like to go to Blockbusters.
Oh, I thought of
popcorn.
Blockbusters when I was reading
Yeah,
this.
I'd like to get a video. I'd like to get St Elmo's Fire and probably Class. A couple of them, but definitely St Elmo's Fire. I'd like to get them off the shelf and be really happy that they're in, and then nobody took them out that evening.
Yeah, I know, right? The struggle.
Yeah, and they get a few mates round and watch them together with snacks.
It's so funny because I totally had that nostalgia reading this book of going to the video shop and picking out those big box VHS covers and taking it home. Oh, the good old days, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, it's just not the same flicking through a bloody Netflix menu and...
No.
We're old. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Thrift Shop Biography. We love making this podcast and we're absolutely thrilled that so many of you are already listening. You could really help us out by leaving us a review somewhere, wherever you listen to this podcast. And if you could share us, tell your friends about us, or drop some links on social media. We have a Facebook page called Thrift Shop Biography, so make sure you come over there to hear about the episodes first and what else we're up to. Okay, see you next week. And if you're new here, there are loads more episodes now to go and listen in the back catalogue, so make sure you go and enjoy them. Okay, thank you very much.